Talk to Derek Bodner over at PhillyMag.com. Get his thoughts on all the Sixers news, the NBA Draft. Does a lot of draft as well. And Derek, I guess the last, not even 24 hours, been less than 24 hours, but there's been a lot of good news for Philadelphia, starting with the workout this morning from Ben Simmons, and then ultimately the 76ers basically, according to reports, targeting his camp and letting him know that he, in fact, will be the first pick in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have Ben in. It's not really the biggest deal in the world. The much bigger issues were getting that face-to-face interview and getting the medical reports. Once those two things happened, getting the workout was just kind of, it was almost just to put to bed some of the rumors and some of the reports that have interest in coming here. It was much more formality. It's not, to me, a huge deal because, like I said, I think the medical reports and the meeting were more important. But it is nice to not have that, does he want to come to Philadelphia? Does he want to play for the Sixers? Topic of conversation that we've been having for the last week or so.
Yeah, so, now let me ask you this. In your opinion, would they have picked him whether or not he worked out and met with them?
Yes.
So are they going to take him regardless? And they just, this clears the mind. This makes them feel a little better. Before we go back to Simmons, let's get the next stuff out. So he works out. They tell him they're going to pick him. Later on in the day, that has been reported that Joel Embiid has been cleared to start 5-on-5 light scrimmaging here. What, in fact, is entailed with light scrimmaging? And I guess, it's got to be a good step in the process to make you start to feel like, all right, they're really planning on having him around this next season.
Yeah, I mean, to my knowledge, it's real legitimate scrimmages. It's not like, walkthroughs or anything at a slower pace. It's just that he's maybe not going to be playing as much and for as long as maybe other people. It's really working to build back up that stamina and that fitness base. But by all accounts, he is cleared to play basketball, which is, a great step and something we really didn't get to. It's further than he got last year. So, he's not going to play in summer league. That's obviously a little bit disappointing. But all signs are that he is going in a positive direction and that he continues to make that progress without any real sign of a setback.
Let me ask you in terms of Embiid, is he at a point where he wishes he was, in terms that he thinks he could do more? They're just limiting him. Do you think he thinks he can do more?
Oh, I haven't talked to him about this. I'm sure he does, because they're being extremely cautious about it. This is an injury where he's really never felt pain. He didn't feel pain when he injured it at Kansas. He was going through workouts without even knowing that he had this injury. He wasn't feeling pain last year, and they didn't know about it until they took him for a checkup. He really has always felt like he could do more, and I think that's one of the things you kind of have to dial back with him, because he does have this desire to get out and to play basketball, to be a part of the team, and to improve in his craft. So I think you almost have to dial him back and say, look, it's not a huge deal whether you're doing it now or in a week or in 2 weeks. Take your time, get healthy, and move forward at a responsible pace.
Yeah, no, I saw him say that in the ride-along piece that he did, that basically said, look, I don't have any pain. That they found that the bone wasn't healing right. So I guess that's a good sign that he has never really been in pain with this foot. I thought it was also interesting in that same video, Derek, that he basically said that Cleveland had told him that he would be the number one pick. It's just that he got hurt the week before the draft and they changed course. I thought that was pretty telling.
Oh, there's no doubt. This was something that, we all pretty much knew at the time of the draft. Cleveland was absolutely going to take him number one. And like I said, they went through the medical reports. They performed their tests, and they found the fracture. It is a shame for him, but hopefully it just kind of speaks to the talent level that he has, and if he is able to get on the court. Because remember, at that time there was already known stress fractures. His freshman season at Kansas ended before the tournament, so for him to be the, no doubt about it, number one pick, even with back concerns, really just speaks to his talent, even if it doesn't maybe make Sixers fans a little more comfortable with him going forward.
I know there's a lot of ifs and questions still around Embiid, and obviously they got to still take Ben Simmons. But how do you, Derek, envision those two guys pairing on the court together?
I think they're going to be a really interesting pairing. I mean, look, those two have the chance to dominate on the glass. They have, if you're looking at them as a 4-5 combination, they can get up and down the court and outrun pretty much any 4-5 combination in the league. They certainly have post skills in both of them. And I think a 4-5 pick and roll with the power forward and the center with Ben Simmons handling the ball, I think that would be real interesting. Joel Embiid has the shooting to space the floor a little bit and give Simmons a little room to operate. But I think those two could be really interesting in how they fit. Again, it all goes back to Joel's health, but I think they have a chance to really be a force in the league if they are ever healthy.
Now, let's get Derek's opinion on the Boston stuff, because last night, real late, there were some reports that trade talks between the Sixers and Celtics had heated up. Now, we had heard this at the trade deadline. We heard a little bit about it. It seems like it's an obvious fit just because of the surplus and their pick that they have. What do you read into now, the stuff coming from Boston? It almost makes it sound like Philadelphia is the one saying, look, we have interest in Dunn. It seems like that they're interested in making the move more so than the Celtics reaching out to them.
Yeah, no, I mean, Brian Colangelo earlier today basically said, look, we have a tier of 6 or 7 guys, which we know we're going to get one, but basically if there's an opportunity that presents itself to get another one of those guys, they're going to pursue it. And obviously they have that excess in the front court. You figure one of Noel or Okafor is very likely to go. So I do think they are going to aggressively look to get another top 5 pick. And I do think that, they like Chris Dunn. I have been told that there are members in the front office that are very high on Chris Dunn. Certainly I think there are other players that they like as well. But I do think if they acquire another pick, it's probably to target him.
Are you all right with that deal? You trading now? The Boston side, Derek, sounds like they're more interested in Noel than Okafor. I think most people just assumed Okafor would be the guy. And are the Sixers more willing to give up Okafor or Noel? But either way, are you interested in that deal?
Yeah, I would have more interest in giving up Okafor than I would in Noel. I have always valued Noel and his defense and his weak side shot blocking and his rotations more than Okafor's offense. I think that has a chance to be a bigger impact on the team. And as a backup plan to Joel Embiid, I think he would fit in nicely. I would look to give up Okafor more. It would be tough for me to give up Noel. Let's put it this way. I think Noel is probably equal or better of a prospect than Chris Dunn just by his sheer talent. But obviously you have that positional glut. You have that logjam that you have to take into account. I do have some concerns over how Dunn and Simmons would work together in the half court, specifically Dunn shooting and how he would space the floor, because you're going to want to put the ball in Ben Simmons' hand, and having a point guard who maybe doesn't have to be defended 23 feet from the hoop, that's going to be difficult to make work. I do think there's a lot to like about that pairing in terms of defense and how they can force turnovers and get out on the break. I think that would be fun to watch. I do think Chris Dunn has a chance to be a real good two-way player, so I understand the appeal. But I do think Noel would be a pretty steep price to pay, even if I think most people would probably be more willing to give him up than Okafor.
Ben Simmons, I know Chad Ford was on yesterday. He suggested that, the one thing that he likes about the fit for Philadelphia is that he believes Brett Brown would play Simmons as a true point guard. What do you think about that?
There's no question that if you're going to do it with the understanding that he puts the ball in his hands a whole bunch. He's going to run a very large portion of your half-court offense. You don't draft a guy who has that kind of physical talent and also who is that great of a passer and not put the ball in his hands. It would be, almost crazy to do that. You'd be really missing the greatest skill. So I think he's going to have the ball in his hand a lot offensively. I do think they're probably going to put him at the power forward spot defensively. And a lot of coaches will tell you that, how they label a player is very much determined on who they guard. So in terms of who they guard, I think he's probably going to defend the power forwards. But in the role they play, it's going to be most similar to a point guard.
What other guys right now, Derek? I know you do a lot of draft work as well. Jamal Murray has been in town. You've got Brown, Jaylen Brown. Other guys that might interest you if, in fact, Philadelphia made a deal to get back into the top 5.
Yeah, I mean, Jamal Murray is a guy who's going to get the most interest because of his shooting. I have some pretty big question marks about him, specifically about his athleticism and about his ability to defend and his ability to really turn the corner and get by that initial and get in the paint and make plays. He can obviously shoot. He's going to be able to shoot. Because of that, you really pay attention and you give thought to him next to Ben Simmons. I'm not his biggest fan, though. The other guy that I like quite a bit, but to my knowledge the Sixers have not yet worked out, is Dragan Bender. And look, I understand you don't need another 7-footer. But whereas Okafor, I don't think fits with Embiid. I don't think he fits with Simmons. Or, I mean, we saw he didn't fit with Noel. I think that one of the nice things about Dragan Bender is he has that perimeter shooting, and he can really move his feet on the perimeter like a guard. And those two combinations, he would really fit in with any of those aforementioned big men. So I don't think you have quite the same problem. And I do think he is the third most talented player in the draft, but I don't see them going that direction at all.
Yeah, there was some, I don't know if you heard that, Derek, the reports out of Boston was his workout for Boston was terrible. I don't know how that affects it. And I don't think, as you mentioned, I don't know that Philadelphia would have interest in bringing him in, but apparently Boston has no interest in taking him if they end up keeping the number 3 pick. For you, is Dunn the second guy you would want? Simmons is going to be their pick, but if you ended up with 2 guys in this draft, is Dunn that second guy that you would want?
Yeah, well, I mean, going back to Bender real quick, how somebody does in a workout really has almost no bearing to me. And I don't think it has all that much bearing to Boston either. But, yeah, I mean, my board would be, Simmons number 1, Ingram 2, Bender 3, and Dunn 4. So if they got another top 5 pick and we cross off Bender as not a realistic option, then Dunn is next up on my list, yeah.
Let me get your take then on obviously Ingram's going to be number 2, correct? There's no other guy in that spot. It's Ingram 2?
Yeah, that's a done deal.
Okay. 3 is up in the air. Who's your 4th guy in that spot?
4th guy in what spot? I'm sorry.
In the number 4 spot. Who do you? If we don't know what Boston's going to do, and I guess that kind of changes a lot of things. But who would be the 4th guy in your take in the draft?
Yeah, well, I think
which is Phoenix, by the way.
Brown
Sorry.
has a chance to go. Yeah, I think Jaylen Brown. I think they're probably going to end up looking for a forward, and I think there are a couple of interesting names there. I think it's probably going to come down to Jaylen Brown or Marquise Chris out of Washington.
Yeah,
a big guy who has some interesting qualities in that he can shoot from 3. He's one of the best athletes in the draft and can block shots, but he's really at the beginning stages of learning how to play, and they're going to have to be really take their time with him. So I think that be patient, but he's certainly in play there as well.
Yeah. What about where are you on Buddy Hield?
I'm not the biggest Buddy Hield fan. Obviously, he can shoot. I don't think anybody's going to take that away from him. But he just doesn't do enough on the court to really justify to me a top 5 pick. He doesn't create offense for his teammates really at all, despite how frequently he has the ball in his hands. He's not great at creating for himself off the dribble either. He doesn't defend at a high level. So if that jump shot isn't elite, he's going to have a hard time justifying being that high of a draft pick. I would probably stay away from Buddy Hield.
If they do not get the Celtic pick or end up with Dunn and, they just stay with what they got and they have 24-26, is there a guy in that range, a point guard, that would interest you? I don't know if, Baldwin, he's all over the map, I see, in mock drafts, although he's been appearing more in the later teens recently. You got the kid from Notre Dame, Valentine. There's been some stories on him that have come out. I don't know if he's a real point guard, though. Demetrius Jackson, another guy, who at 24 or 26 makes sense for you if a point guard would be a pick?
Yeah, well, I think Baldwin would be really interesting if he fell. Because he's 6'4", he has a near 7-foot wingspan, and he can off the catch. He's a real good catch-and-shoot player. So you add in those qualities and the ability to really be a pressure defender. That's really what you want with Ben Simmons. He can defend either the 1 or the 2. He can shoot off the ball, and he, has a little bit in creating for others as well. So I think, especially with the situation the Sixers would be in after drafting Ben Simmons, he would be real interesting. I do not expect him to be there at 24. Certainly, crazier things have happened on draft night, so it's not a complete impossibility, but it would be a surprise for me. And in a similar vein, Valentine, you say he might not be a true 1, but the Sixers, I don't know you really need that.
Derek, we'll move over to a couple other names. I've seen Malik Beasley's name in a lot of different mock drafts, and I want to get your take on how he, why his name keeps coming up and how he fits for Philly.
Yeah, well, I think everybody really recognizes that they need wing players, they need shooting, and he fits both of those. He's a little undersized at maybe about 6'4", 6'4 and a half, but he plays pretty good defense despite that. He was in a real good system in Florida State. He gives good effort. He has good defensive fundamentals, and he can shoot. And he can shoot a little bit on the move, and he can shoot off the catch. He'd be real good in terms of opening up some space, for Ben Simmons and also playing some quality defense. He doesn't create a whole lot off the dribble. I'm not sure most people really expect him to down the line. But again, in terms of a fit, I think most people just assume, and it's something I agree with, he would be a really strong fit with Simmons.
The other guy is Ulis. He was in for a workout today, right? He's a little undersized, but he's an intriguing guy to me anyway, from Kentucky.
Well, he's not a little undersized. He's 5'9" and about $150, which in the NBA is a combination that's tough to overcome. I think you look at a lot of these smaller point guards like Isaiah Thomas up in Boston, and they tend to be rather thick and strongly built. The type that can get in the lane, and despite their size, it takes some of that impact and still finish through. And I'm not sure many people have a whole lot of confidence in Ulis doing that. His jump shot's a little bit streaky, and there's some hip concerns. Again, medical reports after some of these workouts cause some teams to be concerned about maybe having hip problems down the line. He talked about that today. He's never had a hip problem. So he's taken aback by it a little bit. But there is that concern floating out there. Clearly, he understands the game at a high level, and that's always great to have. He can shoot. He's just a little streaky. He sees the floor exceptionally well. And he's just a very smart, fundamentally sound, high effort level, and gives really good effort on the defensive side of the court despite his size. But I think there's some concern that unless he becomes just an absolute elite shooter, his size might prevent him from really being a starter and maybe push him into more of a backup role.
The NBA draft. And, Derek, let's, be honest here. This draft, compared to next year's draft in terms of the talent, where is the drop-off? I mean, because next year's supposedly a loaded draft, right?
Yeah, well, the thing with this year, there is some, obviously Simmons and Ingram are talent at the top. The drop-off is after that. Like I said, I think Bender is the third best talent in the draft, but he's 18 years old, just turned 18 during the season, and played about 12 minutes a game overseas, so it's really tough to get a read on him. And there's just not that strong, second and third tier of prospects, whereas next year, there could be 5 point guards in the top 10 of the draft. There's, forwards and Giles and Tatum who look like just potentially elite prospects. The draft is much deeper, and the lottery looks much deeper. And it's kind of draft, I said this while we were debating basically whether or not you want the Lakers pick to convey. It's the kind of draft where the 7th pick next year might be more valuable and a better long-term prospect than the 3rd pick this year.
All right. Hey, by the way, an update on the Sacramento Sixers pick situation. What is the fallout for Sacramento there? It seems like that trade's gotten worse for them.
Yeah, well, the Sixers still obviously have swap rights in 2017. So if the Kings pick is better than the Sixers pick, the Sixers get the better of the two. And then the Kings owe the Sixers an unprotected first-round draft pick in 2019, which is the year after DeMarcus Cousins' contract expires. So he could be on the move. And with the way that organization is constantly seemingly in turmoil, those are 2 great options to have.
Unbelievable. So, that's the interesting part about this. Philadelphia's starting to add some talent through the draft, and yet they still have multiple picks in multiple drafts upcoming here. So they should continue to be able to add to this core.
Yeah, it's a great. I mean, like you said, you have that pick swap with the Kings, who finished with the 8th worst record last year. Then you had the Lakers pick. Then you obviously have the Sixers lottery bowls, assuming nothing completely unexpected happens. There's a very good chance that even after adding Simmons and maybe Embiid becoming healthy, they could have a top 5 pick again next year.
Very good. Derek Bodner has more at Derek Bodner NBA, and we'll see. Do the Sixers trade to get back into top 5? The next 48 hours should be very compelling for people who have waited 3 years for this. Thanks, Derek.
Yep, thank you.